everyone, welcome back. This is Linda, and thank you for joining me. We are in my basement, and I am going to be restringing some tennis rackets. So, when cutting out strings, it's very important to start from the middle and work alternating between middle crosses, middle mains, and then work your way outward so that you don't stress the racket too much, because the tension is going to change fast when you cut these strings. Almost done. Sometimes you gotta coax out any of these stuck strings with an awl. I'm gonna have to clip that one. I like changing my strings. I don't mind it at all. It gives me a chance to look over my racket and see if there's any problems that need to be addressed. It gives me a chance to look over my grommets, especially because some of these might need to be changed. I make sure that all the grommets are there, and I poke out any debris or rubble or clay in there, and I check each grommet for thin spots or cracks. Like that one right there is probably going to have to be changed. That grommet is really stretched out. That one might cause me a problem. But grommets that are broken and cracked, that could potentially be a spot where a string could break. And then I look over my bumper guard, make sure nothing's cracked or broken. I check the grommets from the outside, make sure they're clear, and that a string can pass through there easily. And then I check my frame really well for any cracks or warps. I've got several different types of strings here. Here's a sample set of 3 different types of strings that Gamma sent me with my stringer. And these are different compositions. They've been put together different ways, I think. Yeah, they're different gauges. This one, the Livewire 16, says it's an all-purpose string for all chord players, and it says it's a soft feel, easier on the arm. Livewire technology, and here's the gauge down here. It's a 16 gauge. And you can see in the picture it's made of little different smaller fibers that have been bound and wrapped. And it says these strings are for players who prefer maximum feel and control on all types of shots. This multi-filament string offers a cushioned feel for exceptional power and greater control that is easy on the arm. And then it gives a little scale of like how good it is at doing different things. So for power, it's an 8, control is 7, comfort an 8, spin 6, durability 6.5. And compare that to their TNT squared 16. This one is for comfort and power. It is also a 16 gauge string. And this one is a solid core with smaller fibers surrounding the core, and then it's all wrapped up. And this one gives a 9 for power, a 7 for control, 9 for comfort, 7 for spin, and a 7 for durability. Then they sent me this one, the Gamma Jet 17. This is a 17 gauge poly string. So this string is going to be a little bit thinner than the other two Gamma sets of string. It's for baseline power players, ultimate, spin, and control. And this string is a monofilament polyester, but it has a twisted profile, almost like a cable for spin and power. Yeah, it's called the Jet 17, and it says Jet has a twisted rib profile and a textured surface for maximum ball bite, providing huge amounts of spin while allowing greater ball pocketing. Jet offers the control and feel players expect to hit punishing ground strokes from the baseline. And here's some string that I've tried before, and I really, really, really like it. I like it so much that I'm tempted just to use it again instead of experimenting on the newer strings. But I love this. It's from Babolat. It's a hybrid setup, which means that in one package you get 2 different types of strings. And I prefer playing with a hybrid setup anyway. Once I started doing it, I've never gone back to a full bed of the same string. But this set here gives you one set of, well, enough for like half a racket would be what I mean by one set of RPM blast. And this one is a polyester monofilament string, and it is a little bit thinner gauge. It's a 17 gauge. And what I love about this string is that it's really stiff and it's 8-sided. It has an octagonal cross section, and I found I've gotten so much spin ability from using this string. And I also love the way it feels. It's got such a it's hard to explain. It's got such a pop to it. And then what I do is I use the RPM blast as my main string, and then to soften it up a little bit, because the string can get a little bit hard on the arm after a while from hitting with it, so I soften it up with the Babolat VS Touch, which is in a 16 gauge. And this string here it's really, really soft. It holds the tension really well, and it's just a great string to play with. Here are the two different strings. You can see right off that they look different. The black one is the RPM Blast. This is the co-poly string. And then for the crosses, this is the VS Touch. It even feels different. It has a different coating. And it's almost translucent. Before I start, I have to clean the clamps on my machine. And so I'm using plain white shoelace and rubbing alcohol. And then I just make sure that shoelace is soaked. Then I just get in there and clean those clamps. Clean off that, there's a powdery residue that gets left behind from the coating on the strings, especially on the natural strings. And if you don't get that powdered coating out of the clamps, they won't be able to hold on to the string as well, and then the string could slip out. Floss carefully between those teeth. I'm using a Gamma 6-point drop weight stringer. You don't want to do it too tightly because you don't want to warp the racket, but you want to do it so that when you pull on the strings, the racket won't move. And those are the polymer monofilament string. I'm going to string first on my mains. Let's make those tips a little more pointy so they can go into the grommet easier. I haven't been stringing my own rackets for very long. I'm still a noob at this, so that's why I'm still really slow. I used to be slower when I first got this machine, and I read the instruction manual page by page, and I think I spent like 3 hours putting the machine together. And then I tried stringing my first racket. Actually, I'm gonna be honest, I started my first racket that I strung was my husband's racket. I let him be the guinea pig. It took me 3 hours to string my first racket. And then I got a little bit better at it. I got it down to 2.5 hours, and then 2 hours. And I think now I'm down to a good, I'd say, 90 minutes, give or take a couple of 15 minutes longer, maybe. Not quite. That's actually perfect. Lock it down and release. And that didn't move too much. Feed it through. And be careful not to kink it. So this stringing machine operates on a principle of gravity and complicated, at least to me, physics. Some principle of physics that basically you just move a weight along the bar on this machine that has that bar has reference numbers on it to reference the tension that you want, and you wrap one end of the string that you want to pull around that little ratchet lever thing there, and as long as that bar is parallel to the ground, the tension you set is the tension you get. And it's actually, considering how simple the concept is, it's fairly accurate. It's just as accurate as the more expensive machines that use electronics. You know, as long as you use it correctly. The only drawback is it's so slow, because you do have to manually crank weight and crank tension on each one of those strings by hand. But, you know, it's not like I'm running a pro shop out of my basement, so taking the extra time doesn't really bother me that much. One, two, three, four, five. One, two, three, four, five. Parnell knot. Now, ideally, the strings should be the same tone on the opposite sides. The sound should match somewhat. I'll get there. One day I'll get there. I'm already getting better at it. And now I shall play you a beautiful symphony. So this string here is the cross string, and this is the VS Touch. And I don't want to risk nicking the string by clipping that little holder on it until I give it a little more space for the clipper to go in by pulling out some of the string. This string it can be delicate. So I treat it like a pretty princess. Because one time I got into too much of a hurry and I kinked it. And the string, once you kink it and then you try to put tension on it, it just creates a weak spot where it can break. So I learned my lesson. And just make my little starting point there. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Start and goes over. I always start over. Under this one, come back up, then through, start over, under, over, under, over, under, over, under, over, under, over, under. Pull it out. Then under, then through. Look at that clumsy yet miraculously beautiful starting knot. It's the best starting knot I've ever done so far. And if it doesn't bust through that starting grommet when I put tension on it, I'm all set. So it's going to go over, it means under this hole. Oops. There we go. Under there. Alright. So over, under, 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 and then over. This one. If that is the one it goes through, and it is. Okay, so every grommet from here should be taken up now. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Okay. All right. Okay. That's good. The cross strings is the harder part of doing this, for me at least, because it's not just so easy as zip that string from one grommet to the other. You have to weave it, in among the main strings, and the weave has to be precise or it's not going to work. But luckily, I am a knitter. I've been knitting all my life, and I think that is what's given me an advantage, because I can spot repeating patterns in string, and if there's a hitch in the pattern, I'll notice. The string that I'm working with here, the natural string, this is also, it takes forever to string this thing on a drop weight because it's so stretchy. Right when I think I got it, it wants to stretch out some more. It helps me to say the pattern out loud as I do it. Over, under, over, under, over, under. Then almost through. Okay, this last grommet right here at the end, that's always hard for me because the outside of it is blocked with another string, and so that string that I'm trying to push through right now, it won't go through. And it's compounded by the fact that it's such a soft string. So what I had to do here was I had to cut a new pointy end piece because the end of that string had just disintegrated, trying to force it through that grommet. So I'm putting wax on this awl. This is just a little votive candle that I keep in my kit. I'm going to get that all waxed up, and I'm going to try and make a path for the string and put a little bit of wax down there. And then I'm going to use this device. It's made by Gamma, and it's an awl within a tube that you push through the grommet in that path that you just made, and then you put the end of the string into the grommet and you pull back on the device, and it kind of grabs the end of the string and helps it go through. It's a really, really handy thing. I love it. Alright, and finally, I'm going to tie off this final knot. This natural string is so much easier to knot than those polyester strings. This one right here doesn't hurt my hand as much. Then I go through that final loop and then make sure that knot is really, really tight. And then I clip it. And then I squish the end so it's not pointy. And now I'm carefully squaring up the strings to get them straightened out. And now I'm going to change this grip. There's not a little sticky piece on the end of this grip, so I have to kind of improvise by just putting pressure on the end and kind of going in a spiral to hold the end down. Right. Us lefties always have to do things different, don't we? And then I tape it down. And this should wrap around the border. Border between the, there we go. Let's get that tight. Thank you very much for spending time with me once again. I will see you in the next video. Have a good night.